I am Cameron, 32 years old, and tonight, my own brother's fiancée publicly humiliated me in front of 200 guests, calling me a failure while my parents laughed. Before I tell you how I fired her in front of everyone she was trying to impress, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The crystal chandelier above the ballroom of the Sterling Heights Country Club was so bright it almost hurt my eyes. Below it, the noise was deafening. Clinking champagne flutes, the roar of polite laughter, the rustle of expensive silk and taffeta. It was the kind of noise that money makes. And tonight, money was the only language being spoken. I stood in the back, near the service entrance, nursing a glass of sparkling water. I was the ghost at the feast, invisible, unwanted, but necessary for the happy family photo op. My brother, Preston, was center stage. He always was. He stood on the raised platform, the spotlight catching the perfect gel in his hair, his teeth bleached to a blinding white. He held a microphone in one hand and Tiffany's waist with the other. Tiffany, his fiancée, looked like she had walked out of a bridal magazine, if bridal magazines featured sharks in white lace. "Thank you all for coming," Preston boomed, his voice confident, practicing the tone he used to close real estate deals. Tonight isn't just about love. It's about success. It's about merging two dynasties. A ripple of applause went through the room. My father, Richard, was beaming in the front row, clapping harder than anyone. My mother, Linda, was dabbing a dry eye with a handkerchief that probably cost more than my rent. I adjusted my tie. It was a cheap tie bought off a rack at a discount store. I knew it looked cheap compared to the Italian silk Preston was wearing. I knew they noticed. I knew they judged. "Look at them," a voice whispered beside me. I didn't turn. I knew it was my cousin Mike. Or at least I thought Mike was on my side. "Preston looks like he just won the lottery." "He thinks he did," I said quietly. "Tiffany is intense," Mike muttered, taking a sip of his scotch. "She's been talking about her portfolio all night. Did you hear her earlier? She practically asked the bartender for his credit score." I didn't smile. My stomach was a knot of cold iron. I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to wait. "And now," Preston said, his voice dropping to a theatrical hush, "I want to introduce someone special. Someone who, well, let's just say he marches to the beat of a very different, very quiet drum." The crowd chuckled. They knew who was coming. "My little brother, Cameron." Preston swept his hand toward the back of the room. "Come on up here, Cam. Don't be shy. I know the lights are bright. Not like that basement you live in." The laughter was louder this time. It wasn't warm. It was sharp. It was the laughter of people who felt superior. I froze. This wasn't part of the plan. I was supposed to stay invisible until the moment was right. But Preston, in his infinite arrogance, couldn't resist one last jab. He wanted to parade me around like a prop. The failure next to the success. The shadow next to the sun. My father turned in his seat. He caught my eye. He didn't smile. He mouthed the words, grim and stern. "Get up there." I walked forward. The walk felt like a mile. Every pair of eyes was on me. I could hear the whispers. "That's the brother? The one with no job? I heard he just plays on his computer all day." Poor Richard and Linda. One son a star, the other a black hole. I stepped onto the stage. The lights were hot. Preston threw an arm around my shoulder. Felt heavy, patronizing. He squeezed too hard. "Here he is," Preston said into the mic. "Cameron. The man, the myth, the mystery. Cam, Tiff and I were talking, and we really want you to say a few words. Give us your blessing. Maybe some advice on, what is it you do again? Fixing printers." Tiffany covered her mouth, giggling elegantly. "Oh, stop it, Preston. He does data things. Spreadsheets, right, Cameron?" She held the microphone toward me. Her eyes were cold, dead things. She was daring me to snap. She was daring me to ruin the vibe so they could play the victim. I took the microphone. My hand was steady. That surprised me. I thought I would be shaking. But there is a point where anger condenses into something solid, something calm. I had reached that point. I looked at my father in the front row. He was making a gesture, a chopping motion with his hand. Cut it short. Don't embarrass us. He leaned forward, his face red, and hissed loud enough for the front tables to hear. Jason, stop making the family look bad. Just smile and nod. He called me Jason. My name is Cameron. He was so flustered, so focused on the image, he used the name of his dog that died 10 years ago. Or maybe he just didn't care enough to remember which son he was looking at. Smile, Preston whispered in my ear. Don't be a freak. I looked at the crowd. I looked at the expensive floral arrangements. I looked at the waiters topping off glasses of vintage wine. I looked at Tiffany. Spreadsheets, I said into the microphone. My voice echoed. Yes, Tiffany said, her smile tight. It's adorable. You know, I said, my voice conversational, almost bored. It's funny you mention data, Tiffany, because data is a funny thing. It remembers everything, even the things we try to delete. The room went quiet, not the respectful silence from before, a confused silence. Preston laughed nervously. Okay, Cam's trying to be philosophical. Let's give him a hand for trying. He reached for the mic, pulled it away. I have a gift for you too, I said. Since you love displays of wealth and power so much. I reached into my pocket. I didn't pull out a check. I didn't pull out a ring box. I pulled out a small, black remote control. What is that? Tiffany asked, her brow furrowing. A garage door opener? In a way, I said. It opens a lot of things. I turned toward the massive projection screen behind us, which had been cycling through photos of Preston and Tiffany on various expensive vacations. Skiing in Aspen, sunbathing in Bora Bora. Cameron, get down now. My father stood up, knocking his chair over. This is enough. Sit down, Dad, I said. I didn't yell. I commanded. The tone of my voice was different. It wasn't the voice of the son who asked for a loan. It wasn't the voice of the boy who stayed in the basement. It was the voice of a CEO. My father was so shocked he actually sat back down. You wanted to talk about my job, I said to Tiffany. You wanted to talk about value, about who pays the bills. I aimed the remote at the screen. Let's talk about the merger you've been bragging about all night, I said. The Sterling Westwood acquisition of Aurelia Systems. Tiffany's face went pale. The makeup couldn't hide it. How do you? That's confidential. That's non-public information. You can't know that. I know a lot of things, I said. But mostly, I know that you didn't read the fine print. I pressed the button. The screen went black for a second. The music cut out. The room was plunged into a heavy, suffocating silence. And in that darkness, before the first image flickered to life, I felt the first true moment of peace I had felt in 30 years. But to understand why this moment was so sweet, and why I was about to destroy my brother's life with a smile on my face, you have to understand what happened 2 weeks ago. You have to understand the dinner. 2 weeks. It felt like a lifetime ago, but the memory was etched into my mind like a scar. It was a Tuesday. My mother, Linda, had summoned me to the family estate. I call it an estate, but it was really just a large house in a gated community that my parents couldn't really afford but refused to leave. They were people who lived for the facade. Cameron, wear something nice, my mother had said over the phone. Preston is bringing someone home. She's substantial. We need to make a good impression. Substantial. That was my mother's code word for rich. I arrived in my Honda Civic, parking it on the street because the driveway was occupied. It was occupied by a brand new, cherry red Porsche Panamera. The temporary tags were still in the window. I stared at the car for a long moment. 3 months ago, I had asked my father for a $5,000 loan to upgrade my servers. I showed him the business plan. I showed him the projections. He had laughed. Cameron, we don't have liquid cash for pipe dreams. You need to be realistic. Apparently, a $100,000 car for Preston was realistic. I walked inside. The house smelled of roasted lamb and expensive perfume. My father was in the living room pouring scotch. There he is, Dad said, not looking up. Try not to talk about your computer games tonight, okay? Tiffany works in high finance. She deals with real money. It's not a game, Dad, I said, taking off my coat. It's forensic accounting AI. We track fraud. Sure, he waved a hand. Just follow Preston's lead. Preston walked in then, wearing a suit that cost more than my car. He clapped me on the shoulder. Cam, good to see you. Don't touch the Porsche, all right? The paint is sensitive. Nice car, I said. Celebration. Just a little signing bonus from the parents. Preston winked. Foreclosing the dryer vent deal at the mall. He sold a lease to a kiosk. They bought him a Porsche. I built a system that could detect embezzlement in milliseconds, and they wouldn't buy me a server. Then Tiffany entered. She was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way. High cheekbones, eyes that scanned the room and calculated the value of everything in it. When her eyes landed on me, the calculation came up 0. This must be Cameron, she said. Her handshake was limp. She wiped her hand on her dress afterward. A subtle motion, but I saw it. Dinner was a masterclass in humiliation. We sat at the long mahogany table. My mother had brought out the good china. So, Tiffany, my mother chirped, leaning forward. Preston tells us you're with Sterling Westwood? That's impressive. It is, Tiffany said, sipping her wine. I'm a senior investment manager. We handle high-risk, high-reward portfolios. We're actually in the middle of a massive acquisition right now. A tech startup. Very hush-hush. Tech. Preston laughed. Maybe you could hire Cam to fix the computers. The table erupted in laughter. My father slapped the table. Good one, son. I cut my lamb slowly. Actually, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I run my own firm. We specialize in algorithmic anomaly detection. Tiffany turned to me slowly, a smirk playing on her lips. Oh, you have a firm? That's sweet. What's it called? Aurelia, I said. She blinked. For a second, I thought she recognized the name. But then she laughed. Aurelia. Sounds like a yoga studio. And what do you do? Make spreadsheets for local bakeries. We analyze large datasets to find patterns of theft, I said. Spreadsheets, she concluded, dismissing me. You know, Cameron, in my world, we deal with billions. We don't just look for missing pennies. We build empires. It's just a hobby for him, really. My mother interjected quickly, terrified that Tiffany might think I was delusional. He's always been tinker-why, like a child with Legos. But we're hoping he'll settle down and get a real job soon. Maybe something in IT support. I could ask our IT guys, Tiffany said, looking at me with faux pity. But they usually require a degree from a recognizable university. I have a master's from MIT. I graduated early. My parents missed the ceremony because Preston had a hangover and needed soup. I have a degree, I said. Sure you do, Preston said, his mouth full of potatoes. Online, right? So, Tiffany. My father interrupted, eager to shift the spotlight back to the winner. Tell us about this acquisition. It sounds major. It is. Tiffany leaned back, the queen of the table. There's this company. Brilliant code, terrible management. The founder is some recluse. We're going to buy it out, strip the assets, integrate the code into our proprietary trading bot, and shut down the redundancy. It's going to double my bonus this year. My blood ran cold. What's the company called? I asked. Oh, you wouldn't know it. She waved a hand. It's obscure. But the acquisition is going to put me in the C-suite. That's why I need a partner like Preston. Someone who understands success. She reached over and squeezed Preston's hand. Preston puffed out his chest. We're a power couple, Preston declared. Cam, you should take notes. This is how the real world works. Excuse me, I said. I stood up. I felt sick. Running away? My father muttered. Typical. I need the restroom, I said. I walked down the hall, but I didn't go to the restroom. I went to the coat closet. I needed air. I needed to leave. As I grabbed my jacket, I heard them laughing in the dining room. "He's so awkward," Tiffany's voice carried. "Does he have issues?" "He's just jealous," my mother sighed. "He's always been the slow one. We tried, but you can't fix personality." "Well," Tiffany said, "at least he's harmless. Just a guy with his little spreadsheets. It's just so sweet that he has a hobby that pays the bills." "Barely. Barely," Preston roared with laughter. "I had to spot him lunch money last Christmas." I stood there in the dark hallway. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. They thought I was slow. They thought I was poor. They thought I was harmless. I pulled out my phone. I unlocked my secure terminal app. I saw the notifications piling up. System alert. Unauthorized access attempt. IP address traced. I looked at the IP address. It wasn't from China. It wasn't from Russia. It was from this house. Someone was trying to hack into my server. Right now, while I was eating lamb, I looked back toward the dining room. Tiffany was checking her phone under the table. She wasn't just mean. She was a thief, and she had no idea who she was stealing from. I didn't leave. I couldn't leave. Not yet. I walked back into the dining room. My face was a mask. "Everything okay, sweetie?" Mom asked, not caring about the answer. "Fine," I said. I sat down. "So, Tiffany, about this acquisition. Tech diligence must be hard. How do you assess the code if the founder is a recluse?" Tiffany looked up, surprised I was engaging. "We have ways. We have consultants." "Consultants," I repeated. "Or do you just brute force your way in?" She froze. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Her eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "Just a term from my hobby," I said, taking a sip of water. "In my world, we call it penetration testing. In your world, I guess you call it due diligence." She relaxed, but the tension remained in her shoulders. "You pick up some interesting jargon in your basement, Cameron." The dinner ended an hour later. I said my goodbyes. I watched Preston get into his new Porsche with Tiffany. I watched my parents wave at them like they were royalty departing for a coronation. I drove home to my apartment. It wasn't a basement. It was a modest, two-bedroom apartment in the city, converted into a high-end server farm. The cooling fans hummed, the sound of my life's work. Aurelia, my company, the one Tiffany mocked. I sat at my workstation and called Ben. Ben was my co-founder, my best friend, and the only person who knew the truth about the scale of what we had built. "Yo, boss," Ben answered. "Why are the firewalls screaming?" "We're under attack, Ben," I said, typing furiously. "And it's coming from inside the family." "What?" "The IP that pinged the server tonight. It was my parents' Wi-Fi, while I was at dinner." "Who at your parents' house knows how to run a script like that?" "Your dad still types with one finger." "Tiffany," I said, "Preston's girlfriend. She works for Sterling Westwood." There was a long silence on the line. "Sterling Westwood? The VCF that just put in the blind bid for us?" "The very same." "So," Ben said, his voice dropping, "she's trying to devalue the asset before the purchase? Or steal the IP so they don't have to buy us at all?" "She said it tonight," I replied. "Strip the assets, integrate the code, shut down redundancy. She wants to clone the core algorithm. If she gets the source code, they rescind the offer and launch their own version next week." "That's illegal," Ben said. "That's corporate espionage. That's prison time." "Only if we can prove it," I said. "Right now, it just looks like a failed login attempt." I dug deeper into the logs. The attack wasn't sophisticated. It was brute force using a password dictionary. But then I saw something that made my heart stop. The attacker had tried a specific password variation. Misty 1998. Misty was the name of my childhood dog. The one my dad called me by mistake. "Ben," I whispered. "They knew the dog's name." "Okay, so she did some social engineering. She asked your brother." "No," I said. "Look at the next attempt." Soccer champ 2005. That was the year Preston won the state championship. It's family knowledge, I said. But then, look at this. Blue Horizon project. I stopped breathing. Blue Horizon was the code name I used for the prototype 3 years ago. I had never written it down. I had never posted it online. I had told exactly one person. Ben, I said, my voice shaking. Who knew about Blue Horizon? Just me, Ben said. And didn't you pitch it to your cousin? That guy Mike? When you were looking for seed money? My cousin Mike. The one guy in the family who treated me like a human being. The one who bought me a beer at Christmas. The one I confided in when I was desperate for startup capital. I grabbed my other phone and dialed Mike. Hey Cam. Mike answered, sounding too cheerful. How was the dinner? Did Preston let you drive the Porsche? Mike, I said. Did you tell Alex or Tiffany about Blue Horizon? Silence. Mike. Look, Cam. Mike's voice changed. It became defensive. You have to understand. I'm in a tight spot. My investments tanked. Preston said he could get me into the inner circle at the club. He said Tiffany looks out for family. You sold me out for a country club membership? I didn't sell you out. I was bragging about you, man. I told them you were smart. I told them you had this project called Blue Horizon. I didn't give them codes or anything. You gave them enough, I said coldly. You gave them the keywords to build a dictionary attack. Cam, come on. Tiffany is a pro. She just wants to help. She said if they acquire you, everyone gets rich. I just wanted a piece of the pie. Is that so wrong? You're sitting on a gold mine and you drive a Civic. It's selfish, Cameron. Selfish. I hung up. I sat in the dark. The hum of the servers, the only sound. My brother mocked me. My parents dismissed me. My cousin betrayed me. And this woman, this stranger, was trying to steal my life's work to boost her yearly bonus. They wanted to steal Aurelia? Fine. I would open the door for them. Ben, I said into the headset. Are you still there? Yeah, man. I'm here. I'm sorry about Mike. Forget Mike, I said. Initiate the honeypot protocol. You sure? Ben asked. That's risky. They want the source code, I said. Let's give them a version of it. But let's make sure it comes with a few hidden features. And the acquisition? Ben asked. The Sterling Westwood deal is supposed to close on Friday. If Tiffany steals the code before then, they pull the offer. Let the offer stand, I said. I'm going to take a meeting with Mr. Sterling directly. Bypass the VCF managers. You think the big boss knows what his underlings are doing? I don't know, I said, but I'm going to find out. And Ben, yeah, make sure the honeypot script activates the webcam on the intruder's device. I want a video. I looked at the calendar. The engagement party was in 5 days. 5 days, I whispered. 5 days to catch a thief. The next 3 days were a blur of code and caffeine. I didn't sleep. I built a duplicate server, a digital mirage. To the outside world, and specifically to Tiffany's scanning tools, it looked like the core repository of Aurelia systems. It looked like the crown jewels. Inside, the code was junk. It was beautiful, complex junk that did absolutely nothing but loop endlessly. But buried in that junk was a tracker. A simple executable file that, once downloaded, would grant me remote administrative access to the downloader's machine. It was aggressive. It was borderline gray hat. But I wasn't dealing with ethical people. I was dealing with sharks. On Thursday morning, the trap snapped shut. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed. Target acquired. I ran to my desk. Ben was already online. She took the bait, Cam. Massive download initiated from an IP in downtown Manhattan. Sterling Westwood HQ. Show me, I said. On my screen, a window popped up. It was a webcam feed. There she was, Tiffany. She was in a glass-walled office, looking over her shoulder. She looked stressed. She was typing furiously. Come on, she muttered. The audio was crystal clear. Another person walked into the frame. It was Preston. "Did you get it?" Preston asked, leaning over her shoulder. "I'm downloading it now," Tiffany whispered. "God, this encryption is annoying. But I used the Blue Horizon key Mike gave us. It worked." "So we're rich?" Preston asked, massaging her shoulders. "Better," Tiffany said. "We control the asset. Once I have this, I can cancel the buyout offer. I tell the board that Aurelia is a shell company and that we've already reverse-engineered their tech. We save the company $10 million. My bonus will be astronomical." "And Cameron?" Preston asked. "What happens to him?" Tiffany laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. "He goes back to fixing printers. Or he can work for me. Maybe I'll hire him as a junior analyst. At minimum wage." Preston kissed her cheek. "You're wicked. I love it. Hey, hurry up. Dad's waiting for us at the dealership. He wants to look at boat upgrades." "I'm almost done," Tiffany said. "By the time the engagement party starts, Aurelia systems will be worthless." I stopped the recording. I saved the file. I backed it up to 3 different clouds and a physical hard drive. "Gotcha," I whispered, but I wasn't done. I needed the final piece of the puzzle. I put on my best suit, not the cheap one I wore to family events, but a bespoke charcoal suit I kept for investor meetings. I drove to Sterling Westwood headquarters. I didn't go to the investment floor where Tiffany worked. I went to the penthouse. I had an appointment with Arthur Sterling, the legend, the man whose name was on the building. When I walked into his office, he was staring out at the city. He was a small man, older than my father, but he radiated a quiet power that my father could only dream of. "Mr. Cameron." Sterling turned. He didn't offer a handshake. He offered a nod. "My analysts tell me your algorithm is the most elegant thing they've seen in a decade. Why are you selling?" "I'm not selling out, Mr. Sterling," I said, sitting down. "I'm buying in. I want to lead the division." "That's part of the deal," Sterling said. "You stay on as CTO. We provide the infrastructure. We scale it global." "There's a problem," I said. "Internal sabotage." Sterling's eyes narrowed. "Explain." I placed a tablet on his desk. I didn't show him the video of Tiffany yet. I showed him the access logs. "Someone from your VCF division is attempting to steal the IP to tank the deal," I said. "They want to claim they built it themselves." Sterling looked at the logs. He looked at the timestamps. "Who?" he asked. "One word." "I'd rather show you," I said. "At the engagement party tomorrow night. I believe the culprit will be there. And I believe they will try to announce their success to you." "You want me to come to a random engagement party?" Sterling raised an eyebrow. "It's not random," I said. "It's my brother's. And the culprit is his fiancée." Sterling sat back. A small smile touched his lips. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who hated betrayal more than he hated losing money. "I see," Sterling said. "Family drama. I usually avoid it." "This isn't drama, sir," I said. "This is a personnel review. I'm asking you to be there to witness the final performance review of your employee." Sterling tapped his desk. "I like your style, Cameron. You're quiet. I like quiet people. They hear things." He stood up and extended his hand. "I'll be there. I'll be the unseen guest." "Thank you, sir," I said. "And Cameron?" "Yes. If this deal goes through, you realize you will be the director of global analytics. That puts you 3 tiers above the VCF managers." "I know," I said. "Good," Sterling said. "I look forward to the show." I left the building. I walked to my car. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my dad. "Dad, don't be late tomorrow. And for God's sake, wash your car. We have VIPs coming." I looked at the text and laughed. It was a dry, hollow laugh. "Yes, Dad," I said to the empty air. "You have no idea." Back in the ballroom, the silence was still heavy. The screen was black. I held the remote. Tiffany's confidence was beginning to crack, but she was fighting to hold it together. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice rising an octave. Preston, make him stop. He's ruining our night. Preston stepped toward me, his face red with anger. Cameron, give me the remote. Now, you're embarrassing yourself. You're jealous, we get it. But this is too far. I'm not jealous, Preston, I said calmly. I'm just doing my job. Remember? The hobby that pays the bills. I pressed the button. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was the video feed from Tiffany's office. The image was massive, projected 10 feet high behind us. The audio boomed through the high-quality speakers of the country club. I'm downloading it now. God, this encryption is annoying. But I used the Blue Horizon key Mike gave us. A gasp went through the crowd. I saw Cousin Mike, standing by the bar, drop his glass. It shattered, the sound piercing the room. On screen, Preston's face appeared over Tiffany's shoulder. So we're rich. Better. We control the asset. I can cancel the buyout offer. My bonus will be astronomical. And Cameron? What happens to him? The on-screen Tiffany laughed. He goes back to fixing printers. Maybe I'll hire him as a junior analyst. At minimum wage. In the real room, the real Tiffany was frozen. Her mouth was open, but no sound came out. She looked like a statue of horror. My parents were staring at the screen, their eyes wide. My mother's hand was clutching her pearls so hard I thought the string would snap. My father stammered. That's a felony, I said into the microphone. Title 18, United States Code, Section 1832. Theft of trade secrets. I turned to Tiffany. She was trembling. You didn't just try to steal from a stranger, Tiffany. You tried to steal from me. Aurelia Systems isn't some random startup. It's mine. I built it. I own 100% of it. No, she whispered. No, you don't. You're broke. You drive a Civic. I drive a Civic because I reinvest every dollar into my infrastructure, I said. Unlike you, I don't spend money I don't have. Turn it off, Preston screamed. He lunged for me. I didn't move. I didn't have to. From the shadows at the side of the stage, a figure stepped forward. 2 large security guards moved to intercept Preston, blocking him effortlessly. The figure stepped into the light. The room gasped again. This time, it was the gasp of recognition from the wealthy elite. It was Arthur Sterling. Tiffany let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. Mr. Sterling. Arthur Sterling walked up the stairs of the stage. He didn't look at Preston. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked directly at Tiffany. Miss Jenkins, Sterling said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to the back of the room. I was under the impression that you were managing the Aurelia acquisition. I didn't realize you were conducting a personal salvage operation. Sir, I can explain, Tiffany stammered. It was due diligence. I was testing security. By using a stolen password provided by a family member? Sterling asked. And discussing how to defraud the board of directors regarding the asset's value? He gestured to the screen where the video was looped on the moment she said, My bonus will be astronomical. Tiffany looked around the room, looking for an ally. She looked at Preston. Preston looked at the floor, distancing himself instantly. She looked at my parents. My father turned his back. Cameron, Sterling said, turning to me. As the incoming director of global analytics and a major shareholder of the new subsidiary, how would you like to handle this personnel matter? The room went dead silent. I looked at my parents. My mother was pale, looking between me and Sterling. The realization was hitting her. Director, shareholder, boss. I looked at Preston. He looked small. The Porsche outside didn't matter anymore. He was standing next to a criminal, and his little brother was holding the axe. I looked at Tiffany. She was crying now, mascara running down her face. Cameron, please. We're family. Practically. Family, I repeated. Family doesn't steal from family, Tiffany. Family doesn't mock family to impress strangers. I looked at Sterling. You're fired, I said. It wasn't shouted. It was stated. A fact. like saying the sky is blue. Security. Sterling nodded to his men. Please escort Miss Jenkins off the premises. The police are waiting in the lobby to discuss the federal charges. No, you can't, Tiffany shrieked as the guards grabbed her arms. Preston, do something. Preston didn't move. He stood there, adjusting his cufflinks, terrified of being associated with her. As they dragged her out, kicking and screaming, the doors swung open and shut with a heavy thud. I stood on the stage, the microphone still in my hand. I looked at the crowd. 200 people, staring at me with a mix of fear and awe. I looked at my father. He turned around slowly. He put on a smile. A fake, trembling, desperate smile. Cameron, he called out, his voice cracking. My son. I knew it. I always knew you were a genius. He started to clap. He wanted the room to clap. He wanted to reclaim the narrative. See, this is my son. I made this. I didn't smile back. Don't, I said into the mic. The clap died in his hands. The party disintegrated. The music didn't start again. The guests, sensing the radioactive levels of awkwardness and legal drama, began to filter out. But they didn't leave without whispering. They looked at Preston with pity and at me with calculation. I walked off the stage. Mr. Sterling shook my hand. That was theatrical, Sterling said, but effective. My legal team will be in touch tomorrow to finalize the paperwork. And Cameron, get a better suit. You represent the company now. Yes, sir, I said. Sterling left. And then the vultures descended. My mother was the first to reach me. She had recovered from her shock and was now in full damage control mode. Cameron. She reached out to hug me. I took a step back. Her arms embraced empty air. Oh, stop being silly, she said, her voice high and brittle. Why didn't you tell us? My God, director. That's wonderful. We were just so worried about you, that's all. We pushed you because we wanted you to succeed. You pushed me? I said. Because you were ashamed of me. Nonsense. My father joined the circle, sweating profusely. We were tough on you. That's what made you tough. It was a strategy. And look, it worked. You're a director. You're the boss. He laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. I shrugged his hand off. Don't touch me, I said. My father's smile faltered. Now, son, let's not get emotional. We have a lot to discuss. This acquisition. Surely there are stock options? Family allocations? I stared at him. The audacity was breathtaking. 5 minutes ago, he told me to shut up and not embarrass the family. Now he wanted stock options. There are no family allocations, I said, because as you made very clear tonight, I'm just the guy who fixes printers. Preston stormed over then. He looked disheveled. The golden boy had lost his shine. You ruined everything, Preston hissed. Do you have any idea what you just did? My reputation. She was my ticket to the VCF network. Now she's in a cop car. She was stealing, Preston, I said. And you knew about it. I saw you on the video. So we're rich. Remember? Preston went pale. I didn't know the technical details. I thought she was just leveraging. You're an accessory, I said. I decided not to press charges against you because, frankly, I don't want to visit you in prison. But don't think for a second you're innocent. I'm your brother, Preston shouted. You're supposed to have my back. Like you had mine? I asked. When you mocked my job. When you laughed while Tiffany spat on my work. Where was my brother then? Preston sputtered. That was just banter. We were just having fun. Fun, I repeated. Well, I hope you had fun. Because the party is over. I turned to walk away. Wait. My mother grabbed my sleeve. Cameron, please. Where are you going? We should go home. Celebrate. We can open that bottle of Dom Perignon we were saving for a special occasion. You mean the one you were saving for Preston's wedding? I asked. She flinched. I'm going home, I said. To my apartment. To my basement. I have work to do. I have a company to run. But the Porsche, my father blurted out. Preston, with Tiffany gone, and her assets frozen. The payments on the Porsche. I looked at the red car parked out front. The symbol of everything they valued over me. That sounds like a problem for a real estate mogul, I said. I'm just a spreadsheet guy. I wouldn't understand the financing. Cameron, don't be like this, my dad pleaded. We're family. I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the fear in their eyes. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing the money I now represented. They were drowning, and they saw me as a life raft. No, I said. You're not family. You're a cast of characters in a play I'm done starring in. I walked out the front door. The valet brought my Honda Civic around. It sputtered a bit as it started. It had a dent in the bumper. Preston was standing on the sidewalk, watching me. He looked like a lost child. The Porsche sat next to him, gleaming and useless. I rolled down the window. Hey, Preston, I called out. He looked up, hopeful. Nice car, I said, and then I drove away. As I merged onto the highway, leaving the country club in my rearview mirror, my phone buzzed. It was a text from cousin Mike. Mike, Cam, man, please. I can explain. Let's grab a beer? I deleted the text. Then I blocked the number. I drove in silence for a while. No music. Just the sound of the wind and the engine. I thought I would feel sad. I thought I would feel guilty. That's what you're conditioned to feel when you cut off your family. You're supposed to feel like you lost a limb. But I didn't feel pain. I felt lighter. I realized that for 32 years, I had been carrying a weight that wasn't mine. I had been carrying their expectations, their insults, their failures. I had been trying to buy their love with my achievements, hoping that if I was just smart enough, successful enough, they would finally see me. They saw me tonight, and I didn't like what I saw in their eyes. I pulled into my apartment complex. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't a country club. But it was mine. I walked inside, turned on the lights, and looked at my server rack. The green lights blinked rhythmically. Data. Truth. I sat down at my desk. I had a lot of work to do. Integration with Sterling Westwood would be a nightmare. I had to audit the code, clean up the mess Tiffany left behind, and hire a new team. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't working to prove them wrong. I was working for myself. 6 months. That is how long it takes for a house of cards to fully collapse when the wind changes direction. I was sitting on a terrace in Florence, Italy, watching the golden light hit the terracotta roofs of the city. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans and ancient stone. My laptop was open, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't hunched over it in a dark room. I was working, yes, managing the integration of Aurelia's algorithms into Sterling Westwood's global infrastructure, but I was doing it on my terms. My phone sat on the table next to a cup of espresso. It had a new number. Only Ben, Mr. Sterling, and a few HR directors had it. I took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter, strong, and perfect. In the last 6 months, my life had accelerated in ways I hadn't thought possible. The acquisition went through. I was now the director of global analytics. My salary had added a 0 to the end of it, and my stock options were vesting. I had sold the Honda Civic. I didn't buy a Porsche. I didn't buy a Ferrari. I simply didn't need a car in Florence. I walked everywhere. I walked because I could finally breathe. But the past has a way of finding you, even across an ocean. It started with an email. It wasn't from my parents. It was from Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who lived next door to my parents' estate for 20 years. She was a kind woman, the type who baked cookies for the holidays and was the only person who ever asked me about my science projects when I was a kid. Subject: I thought you should know. I opened it. Dear Cameron, I know you haven't been back since the incident at the club. The neighborhood has been quiet without you. I wanted to reach out because I saw something today that broke my heart, even after everything they said about you. There was a sheriff's deputy at your parents' house this morning. They were putting eviction notices on the door. I saw your mother sitting on the front steps, crying. I thought you might want to know. I hope you are well. I stared at the screen. Eviction? My parents lived in a gated community. Their house was their pride. It was the stage where they performed the play of their successful lives. I didn't feel the urge to rescue them. I felt a cold curiosity, like a scientist observing a chemical reaction that was inevitable. I called Ben. "Hey, boss," Ben answered. "How's the pasta?" "Better than the code," I said. "Ben, I need you to run a check for me. Not on a server. On a public record." "Name it." "Richard and Linda's finances. And Preston's." "You sure you want to open that can of worms? You've been clean for 6 months. Mrs. Gable just told me they're being evicted. I need to know the math. Give me 10 minutes. I sat there, watching the tourists cross the Ponte Vecchio. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a PDF report from Ben. I opened it, and the numbers told a story of absolute tragedy and stupidity. It wasn't just bad luck. It was a systematic destruction of wealth fueled by ego. My parents hadn't bought Preston that Porsche with cash. They had taken out a second mortgage on the house. A house that was already underwater because they had refinanced it 3 times to pay for Preston's failed real estate ventures. Preston hadn't sold a luxury home in 2 years. The signing bonus he bragged about? It was a loan from my father's retirement fund. And Tiffany? Tiffany had been their retirement plan. They had bet everything on Preston marrying into the VCF money. They had leveraged their home, their savings, and their credit rating on the assumption that Tiffany would pay it all off once she got her astronomical bonus from stealing my code. When I fired Tiffany, I didn't just stop a theft. I popped the bubble. My phone rang. It was an unknown international number. I usually ignored these, but something told me to answer. "Hello, Cameron." The voice was ragged, weak, sounded like my mother, but aged 10 years. "Hello, Linda," I said. I couldn't bring myself to say, "Mom." "Oh, thank God," she sobbed. "I've been calling every number I could find. I had to call Sterling Westwood's main switchboard and beg a secretary to patch me through to your division. Cameron, where are you?" "I'm working," I said. "What do you want?" "We're losing the house," she cried. "They came this morning. The bank. They gave us 30 days. 30 days, Cameron. Where are we supposed to go? Your father, his heart condition is acting up. The stress is killing him." "Where is Preston?" I asked. "He's the successful one. Surely he can help." There was a silence on the line. A heavy, shameful silence. "Preston is... he's in a bad way," she whispered. "Without Tiffany, he lost his connections. The agency let him go. The Porsche. The repo men took it last week in front of the neighbors. He's sleeping in his old room. He's depressed, Cameron. He can't work." "So the golden child is back in the nest," I said. "And the nest is being foreclosed on." "Don't be cruel," she snapped, a flash of her old arrogance returning before fading back into desperation. "We are your family. We raised you. We put a roof over your head. And then you mocked me under that roof," I said. "You told me I was a disappointment because I didn't drive a flashy car. Well, now you don't have a car and you don't have a roof. It seems we have leveled the playing field." "Cameron, please," she begged. "We need $50,000. Just to stop the foreclosure proceedings. It's nothing to you now. I read the articles. I know what your stock is worth. $50,000 is... it's pocket change for you." It was true. I could write a check for $50,000 right now and not even notice it in my bank account. But that wasn't the point. "You're right," I said. "I have the money. I have a lot of money." "Then send it," she cried. "Western Union. Wire transfer. Anything. We are desperate." "I can't do that, Linda." "Why? Why are you doing this to us? Is this revenge? Is this about the dinner?" "No," I said calmly. "It's about investment strategy. You see, 3 months before that dinner, I asked Dad for $5,000. I showed him a business plan with a guaranteed ROI. He told me he didn't have liquid cash for pipe dreams. He told me to be realistic." "That was different," she wailed. "It is exactly the same," I said. "You invested in Preston. You poured your liquidity, your equity, and your emotional capital into a volatile asset with no returns. And you shorted me. You bet against me. Now the market has corrected itself. I am your mother, she screamed. Doesn't that mean anything? It means you gave me life, I said. And for 30 years, you tried to make me feel like that life was a mistake. I'm finally fixing that mistake. Cameron, if you hang up, we will be on the street. Your father. Dad can get a job, I said. He always told me that hard work builds character. Maybe Preston can drive for Uber. I hear they're hiring. But he'll need a car first. You monster, she hissed. You ungrateful, cold-hearted monster. I'm not a monster, Linda, I said, looking out at the beautiful, ancient city of Florence. I'm just a spreadsheet guy, and the numbers don't lie. You're a bad investment. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time. The coffee had gone cold. My hand wasn't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I blocked the number again. Then I called HR at Sterling Westwood. Yes, Mr. Cameron? The director answered. Ensure that no external calls are patched through to my line unless they are from a vetted client, I said. I don't care if they claim to be the Pope. If they aren't on the list, they don't get through. Understood, sir. I closed my laptop. The sun was setting now, turning the sky a brilliant shade of purple. I felt a weight lift off my chest. A weight I hadn't realized was still there. I hadn't just refused them money. I had refused their guilt. They had tried to use the one weapon they had left, their biological connection to me, and it had bounced off. I was free. That night, I walked down to a small trattoria near the Santo Spirito Square. I was meeting someone, not a business contact, not a lawyer. Her name was Elena. She was an art restorer I had met at a museum a month ago. She didn't know I was a director at a global conglomerate. She knew me as Cameron, the American guy who liked quiet corners and knew a surprising amount about Renaissance data patterns. When I sat down, she smiled. It was a genuine smile. It didn't ask for anything. It didn't calculate my net worth. You look different tonight, she said, pouring me a glass of Chianti. Lighter. I finally took out the trash, I said. Big trash day? She asked. The biggest. I smiled. Over dinner, I let myself think about the wreckage I had left behind in the States. Not with regret, but with a necessary finality. I learned later, through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances and public records, what happened to the others. Tiffany didn't go to prison, but she might as well have. Her high-powered legal team managed to plea bargain it down to a misdemeanor to avoid a lengthy public trial that would have exposed more of Sterling Westwood's internal vulnerabilities. But the industry ban was absolute. She was blacklisted from every financial institution in New York, London, and Hong Kong. The last I heard, she was managing a payday loan center in New Jersey. She was working with money, technically, just not the kind that buys islands. Preston was the tragedy everyone saw coming but no one stopped. Without the house, without the car, and without the fake job my parents had propped up, he imploded. He moved into a small apartment with 2 roommates. He started selling insurance. Not high-end commercial insurance, but cold calling people during dinner to sell them term life policies. I imagined him making those calls, using that same booming, confident voice, only to be hung up on 100 times a day. And my parents? They moved to a rental condo in Florida. It was small. It was far away from the country club. I heard my father had to go back to work as a consultant, but his old-school methods didn't fly in the modern market. They were living on Social Security and bitterness, telling anyone who would listen about their ungrateful son who abandoned them. They were still telling the story where they were the victims. And that was fine. They could keep the story. I kept the reality. I looked at Elena across the table. We were talking about art, about how the masters used to paint over their mistakes, creating layers of history on a single canvas. You can't erase the layers underneath, Elena said, but you can paint something beautiful over them. That's true, I said, but sometimes you have to scrape the canvas clean to start over. Is that what you did? She asked. I tried, I said, But the scars are still there. The memory of the dinner. The laughter. The laughter stops when you stop listening to it, she said softly. She was right. The sound of their laughter in that ballroom had haunted me for weeks. But tonight, sitting here in the warmth of a Florentine evening, I couldn't hear it anymore. I realized something profound in that moment. I had spent my entire youth thinking I was alone because I was different, because I liked computers more than football, because I liked truth more than appearances. I thought I was defected, but I wasn't alone. I was just in the wrong room. I had walked out of that room, and I had found a world full of people like Ben, like Mr. Sterling, like Mrs. Gable, like Elena. People who valued competence. People who valued loyalty. People who understood that respect is earned, not inherited. Success isn't just about the money. Yes, the money allowed me to be here. It allowed me to buy my freedom. But the real success was the ability to say no. The ability to look at the people who created you and say, "You do not own me." The ability to look at a Porsche Panamera and see it not as a symbol of status, but as a cage. I paid the bill. I left a generous tip. Elena and I walked along the river, the lights of the city reflecting in the dark water. So, Elena asked, "What now, Cameron? You've conquered the corporate world. You've exiled the villains. What's the next chapter?" I stopped and looked at the sky. It was vast and open. "I don't know," I said honestly. And that's the best part. For the first time in 32 years, the script isn't written for me. I get to write it myself. I took a deep breath of the cool night air. I said, "I'm going to start by enjoying this gelato." We walked on, disappearing into the winding streets of Florence, leaving the ghosts of the past on the other side of the ocean, where they belonged. Friends, thank you for walking this road with me. My story taught me, and I hope it teaches you, that toxicity does not get a free pass just because it shares your DNA. The most dangerous investment you can make is pouring your love, energy, and sanity into people who are committed to misunderstanding and exploiting you. That is the ultimate sunk cost fallacy. Just because you have spent 30 years trying to please them doesn't mean you should spend one more day doing it. True family isn't determined by a birth certificate. True family are the people who cheer for you when you have nothing, who defend you when you aren't in the room, and who respect your boundaries. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to make the hard choice to distance yourself from a family member to save your own peace? Or do you believe that family should be supported no matter what? Please leave a comment below with your perspective, or if this story resonated with you, it tells me that we are on the same wavelength and that these hard truths are worth sharing. Don't forget to subscribe. There are more stories to tell, and we are just getting started. Take care of yourselves.